The wind clawed at the aluminum walls of forward outpost Kestrel's spine, a sound like steel screaming. Floodlights flickered through the storm, halos of pale gold devoured by the whiteout. Snow slammed in diagonal sheets against the hangar doors, hissing as it struck heated metal. Even the Osprey's engines, usually a thunder that dominated everything, sounded subdued, like the storm was swallowing the sound whole. Inside, the Marines moved without words, their silhouettes thick in red light. The air was dry and metallic, a smell of fuel and cold iron. Rowan stood near the open cargo ramp, frost crusted over her M27 wrapped tight in a frost cloth to keep the metal from burning skin. Her ash-brown braid was stiff with ice. It tapped lightly against her shoulder when she turned her head. Every motion was deliberate, reverent, the rhythm of soldiers who had done this too many times, and still knew it could be their last. Visibility 0. The crew chief shouted over the engine noise. "You won't see a damn thing once you're out there." Rowan didn't answer. Her breath fogged the visor of her helmet, then froze at the edges like white lace. She pulled the chin strap tighter, more from habit than need. The briefing board still glowed behind her, its hollow map trembling in the turbulence. Recon Team Calliope. Last known position 10 kilometers east, halfway up a slope known as the Spire. Their transmission had broken up during an avalanche, losing altitude, slope collapsing, taking fire, then nothing but static. The search grid blinked faintly on the display, but already the storm had erased the signal. A young Marine named Jansen was double-checking rope coils. "You think they're alive?" he asked quietly. Rowan's answer was mechanical, cold. "We go where the signal went dead. That's the job. No comfort, just fact." Around them, gear checks continued with ritual precision. Carabiners clinked like distant bells. Ice axes were sheathed and unsheathed, ropes threaded through harness loops, packs weighed down with medical kits and beacon transponders. Every sound, click, scrape, buckle, was small but sacred. At the hangar's far end, a radio operator tried to raise Calliope again. The voice that came back was only half human, wind roaring through an open mic, something like breath, then static, a pause, and a faint tone like a heartbeat. Then nothing. The commander gave the insertion order anyway. 6-hour weather window, he said. You miss it, you die out there. Nobody argued. The Marines just nodded once, the way people do when accepting a sentence already understood. Rowan slung her weapon and took position at the ramp. She could feel the Osprey vibrating through the soles of her boots, a pulse beneath her, steady and alive. Red cabin lights washed over her gloved hands, over the frost crawling up her rifle's optic. That frost caught the light like crystal veins, fragile and temporary, an echo of what waited outside. A voice over intercom T-2 minutes. The rotors rose to full pitch, the hangar filling with a howl that felt almost sentient. The wind outside matching it, beat for beat. Rowan reached for the rope line clipped to her harness. It was stiff, frozen, but solid. Connection. One small warmth amid the infinite cold. The Osprey lurched forward, into the storm's throat. Through the open bay door, the world vanished. No horizon, no sky, no sense of distance. Only a roaring white void where light and land had drowned together. Snow blasted inside, coating everything in glittering frost. The red cabin lights dimmed as if strangled by the storm. Rowan's visor fogged again, and she wiped it with the back of her glove, leaving a smear that froze instantly. She looked down the line at her team. 5 Marines, faces hidden, outlines glowing faintly in the red haze. Each was tethered to the next by rope. Human breath hung in the air like smoke, vanishing as fast as it formed. "Rowan." The pilot's voice crackled in her headset. "You'll be dropping blind. Terrain's unstable. Don't stay long." She keyed her mic. "Understood. If we're not back in 6, assume we're part of the mountain." The pilot exhaled sharply but said nothing more. The Marines gathered near the ramp, silent. The Osprey bucked in the wind, The engine's vibration climbed higher, thinner, almost like a scream. Rowan felt the tremor through her spine and steadied herself on the railing. For a brief moment, the storm thinned, just enough to reveal the floodlights reflecting off the ice field below. A silver wasteland veiled in drifting powder. Then it closed again, and the world returned to blindness. "Go," she ordered. The ramp dropped open, slamming into the wind with a shudder that shook the fuselage. The roar was absolute. Red lights spilled outward, torn and shredded by snow. One by one, the Marines stepped into it, shadows devoured by the storm. Their ropes pulled taut, vanished, then slackened again as each disappeared. Rowan went last. For a heartbeat, she stood on the threshold, the red glow painting her face, the last warmth before the cold claimed it. Around her, everything trembled: the aircraft, the ropes, even the air itself. She could taste the metal of her breath. She touched her rifle, checked her harness once more, and stepped forward. The wind hit her like an ocean. Cold stole her hearing, her balance, her sense of self. The line jerked, then steadied. She descended into the white abyss, where there was no sound except the wind's endless voice. Above, the red light faded to a dim ember in the sky. Below, nothing. Only the storm, and the faint rhythm of her breath. The fragile pulse of life moving deeper into the mountain's silence. The mountain had no sound except the wind, and even that came in fragments, torn apart by stone and snow. Rowan moved first along the ridgeline, one hand gripping the rope, boots biting shallowly into the crust. The gusts hit sideways, violent and cold enough to strip skin if given time. Snow hissed across the slope in white ribbons, fast as sand, hiding every contour. Visibility was so low she could barely see the next Marine's outline, just the faint pulse of a shoulder lamp through the storm, flickering like a dying star. The rope line trembled between them, stretched across the face of the mountain like the thinnest of lifelines. Every few steps, the snow cracked beneath someone's boots, a dry, muffled sound, like bones under pressure. Avalanche risk was high. They moved single file, each man and woman trusting the rhythm of the one-ahead step. Brace, breathe, repeat. Above, the wind screamed. Below, 1,000 meters of slope waited in silence. Rowan's world had shrunk to touch and instinct. The whiteout erased depth, erased sky, erased everything but motion. Her breathing echoed inside the helmet, rhythmic, almost meditative. The compass on her wrist blinked erratically, magnetic interference. She ignored it and followed the angle of the rope, the way climbers trust memory more than light. 2 meters right, she said into the comm, voice muffled by static. No reply. The storm swallowed the signal before it could cross the gap. She raised her gloved hand instead, signaling a halt. Her team froze immediately. 5 shadows suspended in the storm. Beneath the silence, she could feel it. The low, subsurface rumble of snow shifting deep in the mountain's chest. A sound like thunder buried miles underfoot. "Feels alive," muttered one Marine behind her, his voice trembling through the wind, like it's breathing. Rowan didn't answer. She adjusted her footing, tested the rope, and continued forward. They crept along the knife-edge ridge for another 50 meters before the mountain gave them a sign. Not one they wanted. A soft pulse of red light flared through the storm from below, far down the slope. It was there, and gone in a second. A red heartbeat swallowed by white. Every head turned toward it, but there was nothing left to see. "Flare," Rowan said. "Direction, 30 degrees downslope." Her HUD barely registered the coordinates before the signal died. For a moment, she felt the weight of meaning. That someone below, maybe from recon team Calliope, had fired that flare. Then the light was gone, and the snow pressed back in. Absolute. A moment later, Her thermal scanner blinked with faint shapes. 5, maybe 6, moving in the valley beneath them. Enemy patrols, slow and searching, their heat signatures fading in and out behind the blowing snow. Rowan lowered the scanner quickly and made a fist signal lights off. Sound discipline. The squad complied instantly. Now they were moving blind. No light, no comms, only rope and instinct. Each Marine clipped closer to the line, reducing slack, forming one continuous spine of movement. The world became soundless except for the scrape of metal on ice, the rhythmic tug of rope, and the wind that whispered like a voice older than language. The mountain's voice grew louder as the wind funneled through the ridgeline's narrow cut. It roared without pattern, sometimes shrieking like steel tearing, sometimes falling into hollow quiet. Rowan could feel it vibrating through her armor, a sound both outside and inside her. She thought of the storm as a living thing, something ancient and indifferent, watching them crawl across its skin. The snow grew deeper, waist-high now, forcing each Marine to plow through it in silence. Their breath crystallized on their goggles, building a rim of ice that blurred vision even further. Rowan wiped her visor, but within seconds it fogged again, the moisture freezing in lacework patterns. She kept her focus on the rope and the faint weight pulling at her harness, the only proof her team still existed behind her. Another crack split the air, sharp and close, snowpack fracturing along a seam. They froze. Nobody breathed. The wind dropped as if holding itself. For a long moment, the world balanced in perfect stillness. Then, nothing. The snow held. Rowan gestured, move. The rope tightened, and the team resumed. Minutes passed in half steps. Time dissolved into repetition, the dull pulse of movement, the sting of cold on the cheeks, the taste of metal on the tongue. When one Marine stumbled, the rope caught him instantly, jerking Rowan forward. She turned, eyes hidden behind frosted glass, and gave a single hand signal steady. Keep moving. No words. Words were useless here. Feels like the mountains watching. Someone murmured through the line, voice half swallowed by wind. The others didn't respond. They didn't have to. Another rumble rolled through the slope beneath them, deep and patient, the way glaciers shift in sleep. It sounded like the earth sighing. Rowan could feel it in her boots, in her ribs. She pressed a hand to the ice wall beside her. It was moving, just barely, like something alive. They reached a narrow saddle of rock, a ledge barely wide enough for all 6 to rest. Rowan crouched there, adjusting the line anchors, scanning the whiteness for any sign of the flare again. Nothing. The storm had devoured it completely. The red light's memory lingered only in her mind, a phantom pulse against the endless gray. Her headset spat static, then a single word alive before dissolving again. She exhaled slowly, unsure if she'd actually heard it or imagined it. Either way, it didn't matter. She gestured for the team to prepare for descent. Each Marine tightened their harness. Ropes shifted, anchors reset. The small metallic clicks merging into rhythm against the howling void. Frost rhymed every weapon, every buckle. And when they moved again, their silhouettes disappeared almost instantly, consumed by the wind. Rowan waited a moment longer, listening to the wind, the mountain, and the faint groan of shifting snow. The sound felt close, like something circling underfoot. She looked once more down the ridge, toward the valley where the flare had burned out. The world gave her nothing back, no sound, no color, just white, infinite, and merciless. She turned, lifted one gloved hand, and gave the final signal. Move. The rope tightened. The team advanced. 6 dark shapes vanished into the white nothingness, swallowed whole by the storm's breath, their warmth barely a flicker against the mountain's indifference. The blizzard turned the air into a white vortex, snow spiraling upward instead of falling, as if gravity had reversed. Rowan hung halfway up the vertical ice wall, her harness straining, her rope line groaning under the weight of 6 Marines stretched along the ascent route. Beneath her boots, shards of ice fractured with each movement, tinkling faintly before vanishing into the void below. Above, the ridge disappeared into stormlight. No sky, no horizon, only movement and noise. The rope thrummed like a pulse between them, their only proof that they were not alone. Then came the first shot. A muffled crack that vanished as quickly as it arrived. Ice shattered near her shoulder, spraying shards across her visor. Contact. Downslope, someone barked through static. Rowan swung against the wall, scanning through the white blur. The enemy patrol they'd tracked earlier had found their position. Dark silhouettes emerging through snow and gunfire, muzzle flashes swallowed by the storm. Bullets punched into the wall, chipping bright sparks from the ice. She steadied her M27 braced against a crampon and fired downward. 3-round burst, precise, controlled. The recoil jolted through her shoulders like electricity. The muzzle flash vanished instantly, smothered by wind and snow. Every shot felt like firing into a dream. The target unseen. The outcome unknowable. "Keep your spacing," she shouted, but the blizzard devoured her voice. Rope lines twisted and groaned. Below, a Marine named Torres slipped, his boots losing traction. His body swung wide from the wall, dangling in the storm's updraft. The rope held, then began to unravel with a faint tearing sound, the fibers straining in the cold. Rowan didn't think. She cut her own anchor line. The world snapped sideways, her body flung off the wall, weightless for an instant before the rope jerked her downward. She caught Torres's line, the impact wrenching her shoulder with a crack. The shock slammed her into the cliff. Her helmet struck ice, the sound dull and final. Dazed, she drove her knife into the ice to stop the fall. The blade sank with a grating squeal, her torn gloves slick with blood that froze instantly, sealing the fibers like glass. For a moment, there was only the storm, no sound but her heartbeat and the rope groaning above. She hung there, breathing hard, eyes closed, feeling the knife vibrate against the wind's pressure. Then gunfire again, closer now. The enemy was advancing up the slope below, using the blizzard as cover. Rowan braced her boots against the wall, leveled the rifle with one hand, and fired in controlled bursts, alternating with her squad. Each shot was a flare of light and motion in the void. The rounds hit somewhere below. Figures fell, disappeared. Status, she called. Her earpiece buzzed, static howling, then fragments of voices stable, can't see, anchor holding. She swallowed, tasting iron. Hold your lines. Don't waste ammo. They were suspended between sky and abyss, each movement echoing through the ropes like heartbeats in a single body. The blizzard swallowed orientation. Up, down, left, all the same. Rowan's breath froze on her lips. Her visor was opaque with frost. She tore it off with a grunt, the wind slapping her face raw. A round tore through the space beside her head, embedding in the ice inches from her temple. The shockwave numbed her ear. She ducked, fired back, and the recoil spun her slightly. Her rope twisted, pulled taut, then loosened again as the gusts shifted direction. She could hear the mountain breathing, deep and slow, wind through crevices, snow collapsing somewhere distant. Each tremor felt like the earth itself reminding her of scale she was nothing, just motion against stone. Still, she climbed. Torres's line had gone slack, unconscious. Maybe. She anchored him to her harness and began climbing with one arm, the other clinging to the embedded knife. Every motion sent pain through her shoulders and ribs. The knife became her axis, her will, her connection. It didn't just hold her, it defined her. Above, Anders fired his rifle in rhythmic bursts. Movement low, he shouted, voice breaking through static. Keep pressure, Rowan replied. Short bursts, low and tight, make them crawl. The response was a series of sharp cracks that echoed up the wall, fading into the storm's endless roar. Her blood traced a thin red line down the ice beneath her gloves. a fragile warmth amid the vast indifference. She barely noticed it now. Her fingers were stiff, skin torn open under the freezing fabric. She could feel her heartbeat through the wounds, each pulse a reminder that she was still alive, still climbing. The storm thickened until visibility was nothing. Gunfire ceased, not because the enemy had stopped, but because sound could no longer travel through the storm's fury. Only vibration remained: the creak of metal, the hiss of wind, the rope's pulse. Rowan reached a narrow ledge halfway up the wall and pulled Torres alongside her. He coughed once, blood misting into the air, then went limp again. She checked for a pulse. Faint but steady. Relief came in the form of exhaustion, almost warmth. She looked down. The slope below had disappeared completely. The world below erased. The enemy's muzzle flashes were gone. Even light couldn't find them now. It was just the mountain, her team, and the sound of her own ragged breathing. Anders. Position, she asked, voice raw. 20 feet above you, 2 ropes anchored. Good. Keep climbing. We move as one. They ascended through the blizzard like ghosts on a string, each marine a shadow pulled through infinite white. Time fractured, seconds stretched, minutes collapsed. Every motion existed only between breaths. A sudden snap echoed through the storm, one of the anchor lines tearing loose. For a moment, everyone froze. Then the mountain's gravity reclaimed them, a violent jerk, a slide, snow and ice cascading around them like shattered glass. Rowan jammed her knife into the ice again, screaming wordlessly as her harness bit deep. The line held. Somehow, they held. When the motion stopped, everything went still. No gunfire, no voices, only the sound of snow hissing past like rain. She hung there, suspended, staring into the white nothingness. The knife trembled in her grip. Her gloves were in tatters, fingertips bleeding freely, blood freezing into tiny black threads against the snow. She closed her eyes and breathed. The world slowed. Heartbeat, rope strain, silence. For the first time, the storm felt like it was listening. When she spoke, her voice was calm, low, carried more by intention than sound. "Don't look down," she whispered through comms. "Keep climbing." The rope tightened above her, a single line drawing 6 living souls upward through the storm, small, disciplined, and defiant against the mountain's endless, indifferent breath. The descent into the avalanche basin felt like falling through silence. The blizzard that had once screamed now whispered, smothered by snow thick enough to swallow every sound. The Marines slid and climbed down the fractured slope in half steps, ropes stiff with ice, boots punching into powder that concealed crevasses and shards of blue glass like ice. Rowan's breath steamed in white bursts, each exhale vanishing as quickly as it formed. Her arms trembled with exhaustion, her gloves shredded, fingertips bleeding inside them. Yet she kept moving, following the faint pulse of a locator beacon blinking through static. The basin stretched outward like the inside of a broken glacier, the ground uneven and alive beneath its crust. Each shift sent muffled cracks running through the snowpack, deep, slow moans from the buried mountain. Visibility had collapsed to a few meters. The storm thickened until even the horizon was gone. Her world was reduced to motion, breath, and the weak blue glow from the team's shoulder lamps cutting halos through the mist. "Reading a signal," Anders said, voice hoarse in her headset. "Calliope's beacon, 50 meters ahead, bearing 14. "Copy," Rowan replied, steady though her voice rasped with cold. "Stay tight. Watch the underlayers. Sheer could trigger another slide." They advanced like shadows, every step deliberate. The ropes between them vibrated faintly, the only connection to one another in the blindness. Somewhere ahead, beyond a rise of drifted snow, a flicker of green light pulsed once, twice, then went still. Rowan raised her hand. The team halted. She felt the quiet pressing down like weight, the stillness absolute. They crested the drift and saw it the ice cave. Half collapsed. One wall caved inward by tons of frozen debris. Inside, a faint green chem light glowed like an underwater lantern, its color diffused through layers of translucent snow. For a heartbeat, the light felt alive. Then it flickered, as if in pain. Calliope. Rowan breathed. They dropped to their knees, hands and shovels scraping at the crust. The snow fought them, heavy, compacted, fused with ice. Rifles became shovels. Bayonets pried open slabs. Knuckles split under the strain. The sound of digging was rhythmic, reverent, a heartbeat against the storm's hush. Rowan tore off one glove, skin sticking briefly to the ice, and dug bare-handed. Blood smeared across the frozen wall, freezing instantly. Thin red veins through blue crystal. Contact Jansen shouted. His gloved hand brushed fabric beneath the surface. Together, they cleared more snow until the shape of a man appeared. Helmet cracked, face ashen. His eyes fluttered open, pupils unfocused. Breath fogged once, faint and shallow. Marine Corps. Stay still, Rowan said, leaning close. Her voice came soft, steady, as if volume might break him. We've got you. You're coming home. Another figure lay nearby, barely visible beneath a slab of ice. Anders and Torres heaved it aside, grunting with effort. The second Marine's hand moved weakly, a twitch more than a gesture. His lips cracked when he tried to speak. Cold. How long? Rowan pressed her hand against his shoulder. Long enough, she said. Save your strength. They wrapped the survivors in thermal blankets from their packs, the fabric stiff with frost. Their breaths created a fragile cloud of warmth, steam rising like prayer smoke into the storm's stillness. Rowan's hands shook as she worked, not from fear but from the final depletion of everything she had left. Over the ridge, a low rumble began to build. Not avalanche. This was deeper, metallic. Distant mortar fire, shells landing somewhere uprange. The sound was muffled by snow, explosions blooming like ghosts, their force visible only in the way drifts shivered and sank. Time's short, Rowan said. We build a stretcher and move. She unhooked her rifle sling, threading it through rope and webbing to form a frame. The Marines followed her lead, silent and practiced, fingers stiff as they tied knots with slow precision. When they lifted the first survivor onto it, the ropes groaned, frozen stiff but still holding, a symbol of unity stretched to its limit. Another shell landed closer, a low thump that sent a plume of snow rising in slow motion. Snowflakes drifted like ash, soundless and inevitable. The team moved faster now, shoulders low, their motion a choreography of exhaustion and duty. Rowan reached into her chest rig and pulled free a red flare. She cracked it with both hands, and light exploded into the storm, a single pulse of blood red against infinite white. It illuminated the basin like a heartbeat, reflections bouncing off ice and armor, turning every surface into something living. The survivors' faces glowed in it, eyes glassy but open. Rowan's own face was stained crimson beneath the frost, as though the flare's fire burned inside her. For a moment, even the storm paused. The red light painted her breath, her torn gloves, the ropes that bound them all. Around her, the Marines stared upward, searching for any sign of the sky, for the faint hope of extraction. None came. The world remained silent. The flare hissed softly in her hand, bleeding light into the void, its reflection shimmering across the ice like blood under glass. We move now, she said. Her voice was hoarse but resolute. 2-man carry, rotate every 100 meters. They trudged through the basin, pulling the makeshift stretcher across uneven snow. Every step felt heavier, the wind clawing at them like a physical force. Rowan walked at the front, the flare's dying glow bobbing in her hand. Behind her, The line followed like shadows on a thread. The storm thickened again, snow swallowing the red light until it became a halo barely visible through the white. Each marine's breath trailed upward, glowing faintly in the flare's reflection, tiny clouds of warmth suspended in the cold's dominion. Another explosion echoed, closer now, the sound rolling under their feet like thunder. Rowan didn't look back. Her focus was on the slope ahead, the faint incline where the extraction coordinates blinked in her HUD, distorted by interference. They reached the base of a ridge where the snow grew softer, deeper. The flare burned to a sputtering ember, light trembling against the wind. Rowan planted it upright in the snow beside them, a defiant signal against the indifferent storm. Beacons online. Anders said. Evac birds inbound. ETA 5 mics. Hold position, Rowan replied. We stay with them till wheels down. The Marines circled the stretchers, forming a half ring against the wind. The storm pressed closer, smothering color, sound, everything but breath. Rowan knelt beside one survivor, his face pale, eyes half shut. She adjusted his blanket, tucked it around his neck, her gloved hand resting briefly on his shoulder. His chest rose, fell, rose again. Steam drifted from their mouths, merging in the air, fragile proof of life. Then, far above, came the faint thump of rotor blades, a sound so soft it almost didn't exist. Rowan looked up, her eyes narrowing against the blizzard. The sound grew louder, closer, until it filled the silence completely. She rose, grabbed the stretcher's front handle, and lifted. Her arms screamed in protest. The wind tore at her braid, whipped snow across her visor. The flare's last flame burned against the white void, its red light defiant, unwavering, human. Let's bring them home, she whispered. And together they carried the wounded toward the sound of salvation, the storm folding around them like a closing hand, white swallowing red, silence reclaiming everything but the faint rhythm of their breath. The blizzard broke at dawn, not all at once, but in slow, uncertain breaths, the wind losing its voice, the snow falling soft instead of sideways. Rowan stood on the extraction plateau, breath misting pale in the thin light. The world was gray and blue now, colors returning after hours of white blindness. The Osprey hovered just above the ice shelf, rotors thundering, blades scattering frost into spirals that caught the rising sun and scattered it in shards. It was a violent grace, sound and motion on the edge of collapse. She trudged forward through the churned snow, boots sinking deep with each step. Her plate carrier was glazed with ice, straps frozen stiff, webbing thick with frost. Her helmet was cracked above the brow, a dark fissure running across the shell like a scar. Her braid, once brown, was now pale with rime, strands frozen together into a single rope of ice. Every exhale steamed and vanished, replaced instantly by the next. Each footprint filled itself in, snow reclaiming it before the next was made. Behind her, the team carried the wounded on improvised stretchers, slow, synchronized, deliberate. The rotor wash tore snow up in spirals, wrapping them in ghost-like veils of vapor. Their silhouettes blurred against the dawn, motion swallowed by light and wind. Rowan moved to guide the way, her gloved hand raised against the downwash, signaling the crew chief with the last of her strength. The man's response was a thumbs up through the swirling frost, his voice inaudible but his meaning clear. They had made it. The Osprey's rear ramp lowered, red cabin light cutting through the haze like a heartbeat. The color looked impossibly warm after the storm, a soft pulse of life in the frozen world. Rowan watched her team load the survivors first, Anders and Jansen securing the stretchers, straps biting into webbing, hands shaking from exhaustion. Their movements were mechanical, sacred, as if each gesture carried a prayer. The storm still lingered along the valley below, vast, white, and indifferent. It moved like breath through the mountains, slow and endless. Every trace of their struggle had already vanished, the climbing routes buried, the flare extinguished, the blood on the ice sealed beneath a new layer of snow. The mountain had taken it all back, erasing the memory of their fight as easily as wind smooths a dune. A Marine paused at the ramp and turned toward her. His goggles were fogged, his voice lost under the rotors, but he lifted his hand in a slow, solemn salute. Rowan returned it, not sharply, but with weight, her arm trembling halfway through the motion. The salute lingered between them for a heartbeat before he turned and disappeared into the red glow of the aircraft's belly. Rowan stood alone for a moment, her rifle slung low, her breath shallow and measured. Fatigue no longer felt like pain. It was something quieter, deeper, a hollowing out of everything except stillness. Her hands hung at her sides, fingers stiff but open. She looked across the basin below, the place where they had dug, fought, survived, and saw only silence. The mountain had erased their presence completely, leaving nothing but light and shadow. The flare they had planted hours earlier still smoldered faintly in the snow, its red dying down to ember. The color barely showed against the dawn now, flickering beneath a crust of frost. For a moment it looked alive, like the last heartbeat of the world they had fought to preserve. Then a gust of wind passed, scattering powder across it, and the light dimmed to nothing. She bent down and lifted the spent casing of the flare, its metal warm against her frozen glove. A small thing, meaningless in scale, yet somehow sacred. She turned it once in her palm, then let it fall back into the snow, where it sank without a sound. Duty leaves no monument, she thought, only memory. Rowan Anders's voice broke through the wind, faint but urgent. She turned to see him at the ramp, one arm raised, beckoning. His face was streaked with frost, eyes rimmed in exhaustion. He shouted something she couldn't hear, but she didn't need to. The message was in his gesture. It was time. She started forward, her steps heavy, each one erasing itself as it landed. The rope lines trailing behind her shifted in the wind, coiling and loosening, their tension gone now that the climb was over. They snaked across the ice like veins cooling after a great exertion, bonds loosened but not broken, reminders of lives held together through trust and endurance. The Osprey's turbines screamed, heat rippling in shimmering waves across the snow. She reached the ramp just as it began to lift, the red light washing over her face. The color made her look alive again, even as the exhaustion hollowed her eyes. She turned once more toward the valley. The storm below had calmed into stillness, no movement, no noise, only the faint shimmer of wind-blown frost across endless white. The world looked peaceful now, almost merciful, though she knew what it had taken to achieve that illusion. Nature's indifference was perfect, complete, unscarred by what they'd done here. The mountain stood untouched, unjudging, infinite. For a long moment, she simply watched. The others were already inside, seated, silent, eyes closed in reverence or disbelief. The sound of the rotors blurred into rhythm, thump, 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 the same cadence as a slowing heart. The sun finally breached the ridge, pale and distant. Its light caught the frost on her armor, melting it in thin rivulets. Melting frost, endurance finally at rest. Drops fell to the snow and froze again before they could sink in. Rowan took one last breath of the mountain air, dry, sharp, alive, and stepped onto the ramp. The red light dimmed as the hatch closed, sealing them inside the roar of the aircraft. She could still feel the mountain beneath her boots, the weight of rope around her chest, the heartbeat of wind in her ears. As the Osprey lifted, the plateau fell away, shrinking into distance. The blizzard was gone. Only ribbons of mist curled around the peaks, fading into the morning sky. The world below became a canvas of untouched white. No sign of the battle. No flare. No prints. Rowan sat near the rear hatch, helmet resting in her lap, her braid stiff as wire. She stared through the small window at the landscape sliding away beneath them. vast, indifferent, eternal. There was no triumph in her gaze, only recognition. Survival wasn't victory, it was permission. The mountain hadn't been conquered, it had simply allowed them to leave. Her reflection shimmered faintly against the glass, face pale, eyes calm, mouth set in something almost like peace. She watched the peaks until they blurred into the horizon. Then, softly, almost to herself, she whispered, "You don't beat the mountain. You earn your way off it."